Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another teleseminar with the Accidental Salesman. This afternoon, I'm delighted to have with me Charlie Lawson, who's the National Director for BNI, and he's here to help us win more business with large corporates through local networking groups. Good afternoon, Charlie.
Afternoon, Richard. How are you?
I'm great, thank you very much. Before we get started, perhaps I can have a little bit about your background and how you became an expert on local networking groups.
Absolutely. I mean, my history with local networking groups is entirely through BNI, the organisation I'm National Director of. I'd been in corporate life beforehand. I was in IT, didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. And I was given an opportunity within the BNI business. It was through a family connection originally, but I was given an opportunity to get involved with the BNI franchise in the area where I was living in South East London. And I worked with a number of BNI groups in that part of the world. This was back in 2004 I started, and then my roles changed a few times. I moved to a different part of the world in northwest London, and then the opportunity came to take over the national business, which is what happened 3 years ago.
Great, okay. I do a lot of networking, and I regularly come across people who want to do business with large corporates. They've tried local networking groups, and it's just not worked for them. Where do you think they're going wrong?
Well, it's a very good question, and indeed it's a very common question. It happens a lot because people want to get in network with large corporates, but hey, typically large corporates don't go and network in the places that us as small businesses are networking in. So, very good question. I think one of the key problems is that of premature solicitation, which you've got to say very carefully. But premature solicitation happens a lot in networking. It's where we perhaps believe we're connected with someone, and with social media, it's very easy to be connected with people. Give you an example on Twitter, you can follow Richard Branson, for example, and just because I happen to be following him doesn't mean I can definitely sell to him. That's would definitely be premature solicitation. It's all about building relationships, networking is. So we've got to build a relationship first before we try and get networking straight away with the large corporates. Another challenge is that often people in small businesses don't even try. They just think, well, the bigger corporates are out of my league. It's just not going to happen. So they don't even put themselves in a position where they might be able to network with the bigger corporates. So there's two key challenges that people face.
I also come across a lot of people who know lots of people. So they've developed the relationships, but they still don't win any business with large corporates. Where do you think they're going wrong?
There's probably a number of ways which they are. A possible one that they are is they're just not asking for it. I think that part of the challenge, as I said, small businesses don't even necessarily try because they think they're out of the league, or they try but they're taking the wrong approach to doing it. They're perhaps not asking directly and specifically for the sort of business that they're after, and I suspect that happens a lot. We've certainly seen it with a lot of members within the BNI organisation, where they want to get to network with the larger businesses or a specific business, but they're not specific about it themselves, and I feel that that's one area that they could really focus on to try and improve their results. It's getting yourself in a position to be able to speak to the people you want to speak to. I'll give you an example. This is one of the early networking tips that I learned. Essentially, it says that you should go and network where your target market hang out, if you like, hang out in inverted commas. For example, you want to speak to solicitors as a group, and perhaps there's a big corporate you'd like to speak to within that. You want to speak to Clifford Chance solicitors, for example. If I wanted to do that, I would go and talk to as many solicitors as I could, build a relationship with them, and get them to invite me to some sort of networking session that's being run by the legal profession. Hey, it could be one that's hosted by Clifford Chance in their offices, for example. And just by being there, you're going to give yourself a chance to network with the type of people you want to get in touch with.
So what you're saying is you can use local networking groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I gave the example there. You go and talk to a local solicitor that you know well, someone in the legal profession, get to know them, build a relationship with them, and then find out where they network. Lots of industries have industry-specific networking sessions, and yeah, that would be one way of getting in to talk to the larger corporates.
What would be really great is to get your best tips for networking into large corporates. What would the first one be?
I think the first one I think about is more of a general state of mind, if you like. And I would say don't expect it to happen. We often heard of the 6 degrees of separation, and that anyone on Earth is connected to anyone else by 6 degrees. I might know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows the person I want to speak to. It gives some people a full sense of expectations that connections are bound to happen at some point in time. It's a study done by Ivan Meisner, who was the founder of BNI. found that, yeah, there are people who are connected by 6 degrees, but they tend to be the most well-connected people. And the rest of us sort of follow on behind, and, you know, we use those people to get to the connections that we want. Typically, actually, he found that 29% of the business community are these people who are connected to anyone by 6 degrees. Not all of us are. So my point is, don't expect it to happen. If you want it to happen, then you've got to act like a top networker, and then that will increase the chances of it happening.
What I hear you're saying is that a lot of people go into networking, and just because they're connected to somebody, they're sitting there waiting for something to happen rather than doing something about it.
Absolutely. It's you know, any good networker, well, in fact, in anything in life, but in networking this particularly applies. You know, the more you put in, the more you'll get out of it. And if you sit there waiting for it to happen, nothing's going to happen, honestly. You've got to be proactive, try and help other people first, and then it will come back to you in the future. Tip number 2 would be, to be honest, it's a tip that I'd give to anyone who wants to network, whoever you want to network, whether you're trying to get into large corporates or small, it really doesn't matter. That is, networking is about building relationships. I'll come back to the point I was saying about with premature solicitation. If we go out and try and sell to people directly, especially in the early stages of doing networking, people automatically get turned off by that. You know, think of the last networking event you went to. Were you there to buy anything? No, you're not there to buy. You're there to try and network your business. The fact is, nobody's there to buy. They're all there to try and develop their business. So there's no point going anywhere trying to sell anything. Networking is about building relationships, and that relationship will start with a simple conversation. It'll maybe end with the exchange of a business card and an agreement to meet up, perhaps at a later date to have a coffee or have a chat about how the two parties can go forward and perhaps help each other. And hey, over time, you build a relationship with that person. The key to networking isn't what we know or who we know. It's not even how well we know them. It's about who the other person knows, and would they be prepared to put us in touch with them. And that's where it starts to get interesting. When we're thinking about getting into the large corporates, we've got to think, who do our contacts know? Who do they know who we might be interested in talking to?
Somewhere along the line, you've got to start talking business. Where does that happen?
Well, going back to the tips, I'll then go to our next tip, and that's where we're starting to get interesting, start to move towards business, is that's where we ask specifically for who we want to speak to. I want to speak to the marketing manager at ABC company, whoever that is. I need to know that person's name. And that seems counterintuitive. You might think that, any business in the communications field, that would be good for me. But no, I need to know which company it is. Do I want to speak to Vodafone, for example? What level do I need to speak to within that company? Do I speak to the marketing department, the HR department, the finance department? Do I need to speak to the CEO? Whoever it is, we need to know who that is to gain success from this process. Not only job title, we need to know their name as well. Tip about that is very simple, pick up the phone and dial whichever organisation you're asking for. Whoever answers the phone will be on guard. It's their job to not put you through to whoever you want to speak to. So you just ask a very different question. You say, I want to speak to the finance manager, for example. What's their name? I'd like to put something in the post to them. And that's all I'm going to ask for them. I'm not going to try and get through to them. I'm not going to try and speak to them at that point. I'm just going to say, I'd like to put something in the post to them. Can I have their name, please? And thankful they can get someone off the phone very quickly and they can field the call easily, they'll give you their name, no problem. It's also very easy with the internet and social media these days. Look up on LinkedIn. You can find out who you need to speak to very easily. Find the name, job role, obviously the company that you want to do business with. Once you've got those, you can use your existing relationships with your networking contacts to get in.
How do you know when you've built the relationship up enough that you can actually ask?
The answer to that is how long's a piece of string. For every single networking relationship you have, it's going to be slightly different. Typically, what I would suggest any business does is don't ask about your own business until that person says, how can I help you? Because what that suggests is you've given enough to the relationship for them to want to help. And that's really crucial. It's one thing being able to help, but actually wanting to help is really important. So we talk about something in BNI called the U game. If I'm in a conversation with someone, I meet someone at a networking event, I'll always try and ask them about their business first. If I've do that and we end up talking about their business first before mine, I've won the you game because the other person, you, has spoken first. And it extends over the course of a networking relationship. I want to keep helping them, live, givers, gain, and in time that will come back to me. So I guess the answer to your question, you can't put a finite amount of time on it, but when someone asks, so how can I help you then, you know you can ask then.
So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4?
Well, we talked about, tip number 3 is all about making sure that you ask. You've got to ask specifically for who it is. But crucially, after that, you've got to justify what that means. What will you do for the person that you want to speak to? You know, it's all well and good saying that you'd like to help that person, but what are you going to do for them? How are you going to help them develop their business? What are the returns you're going to give them? What are the benefits they're going to see after that? You've got to sum that up succinctly in a statement. So perhaps you'd like to talk to so-and-so about their communications because you'll help them increase their bottom line by a certain amount. Whatever it is, you've got to have a real good justification for it so that the person who has the potential contact can think, okay, well, I can see how I can help. I understand why they want to speak to that person, then we're going to be more prepared to have the conversation for you. Perhaps I'm a web designer, for example, and I want to speak to a large corporate. And, okay, one of my contacts will perhaps be able to help me because they've got an in to the person that I'm interested in. They also want to help me because I've helped them enough. But then you've got to get over the hump of the question that says, well, I already know a good web designer. Why would I want to speak to this one? So yeah, you've got to have your justifications. Tip 5, a bit more general this one. I would just say don't expect miracles overnight. It's not going to happen straight away necessarily. This practice of being specific and asking for the people you want to speak to, it won't happen overnight. It often takes time, especially when you're talking about local networking groups like a BNI group. There's a certain number of people in the group, maybe there's 35, 40 people in the group, and it may well be that the people there don't know the person you want to speak to, or don't know someone who knows the person you want to speak to. That does happen. My suggestion would be to keep asking. Each week you attend the meeting, keep asking for that same referral. One of two things will likely happen. Number one week there'll be a visitor to the group who's first-time attendee or substituting for someone else. And guess what? They know the person you want to speak to. So if you hadn't asked that week, you wouldn't have got the potential to the person you're after. So keep asking each week. Secondly, as well, what you often find is because in a networking group you tend to build up very good relationships with the people there. They want to help. So I've seen it before where someone in the group gets so sick of you asking for the same person each week, they actually proactively go out and do something about it. And that's very interesting when people do that. It's when I was working in BNI in South East London, a member in the group, she was a florist, really wanted to speak to, there's a funeral centre in Catford in South East London. And I didn't know, I knew of the organisation because literally I drove past it on a regular basis. And I was just driving back from the meeting that day, and this lady, the florist, said, I'd like to speak to someone at the Catford funeral home. And I was just driving past, and I thought, hang on. Pulled over, got my phone out, and rang them, and made a call on behalf of the other person. They took the call, and I just said, look, I'm trying to help this person out. They're really good business. I know them well. They'd really like a chance to speak to you and demonstrate what they could do for your business. And guess what? They took the call, and it led to a referral and business. Back to the main point, just don't expect miracles overnight, though. It will take time for this strategy to work. You've got to have the necessary level of relationships first, and then it just takes time for the results to come through.
So someone's listened to this because they want to win business with large corporates. How long should they reasonably expect the process to take before they start getting results?
Well, as I said, it's not going to happen overnight, although it does from time to time happen. I'll give you one example of where it happened pretty much overnight. I was running a training session for BNI members, and we were asking people to be specific, and this was, in fact, a very good example of someone who wanted to speak to a large corporate. This was a lady who was a BNI member. She was an events company, and I was educating on this process, on how to be specific and why it works. And I could tell I didn't have full buy-in from this lady. She just didn't believe me that this was going to work. So I said, go on, just give it a go. Try it and see what happens. Who would you like to speak to? And she said, look, it's not going to work. And we went through this a couple of times, back and forth. I said, go on, just give it a go. She said, all right. Sort of almost half sarcastic tone, said, I'd like to speak to marketing manager of the Hilton Hotel Group. Is that any good for you? And I said, okay, well, let's just see what happens. There was a room of about 45 people there, and a guy, I kid you not, he was sat 2 seats down from her, so very close, and said, I live next door to the chairman of the Hilton Hotel Group. I could probably make an introduction for you. Would that be of interest? And the look on her face was, wow, okay, I get what you were saying. So it does happen in that way. It can happen. What I would say, going back to the question, how long it does take, though, is we've got to make sure we get to the point where people want to help us. Networking is about building relationships. In a referral situation, there's 3 parties. The receiver of the referral gets some work, so my business benefits. The third party for whom the referral to gets a benefit because they get a service or a need covered, or whatever it might be. And also the giver of the referral, crucially, gains kudos with both of those other parties. Number one, the third party who has the service done, they're happy. And number 2, the receiver of the referral is great because their business has benefited from it. The thing is, though, with referral marketing is that we rely on strong relationships to make that happen. I, as the referral giver, cannot pass the referral unless I know that they're going to do a good job. I just can't do it. Because let's say that the person for whom the referral is to, the recipient of the service, let's say that's someone who's a client of mine, paying my mortgage, feeding my kids. If that relationship was to be ruined, I'm going to suffer from that. And so I'm not going to risk my reputation on passing a referral unless I know that the provider of the service is going to do a good job. So I'd say the time element, it's how long it takes for me to be sure that that relationship isn't going to be jeopardized. And it'll be the same for anyone who passes any referral. It might be different levels of trust are required, but still trust needs to be there.
So when we look at local networking groups, and we've talked about the fact that small businesses tend to be in these local networking groups, are there circumstances when there are actually large corporates that go along to these networking groups as well?
It does happen from time to time. I mean, to be honest, mainly the groups are full of small businesses, definitely. But there are some bigger businesses that are involved in organisations like BNI. I'll give you one example, particularly the banks are very much involved in BNI groups. It's my belief that bigger business will wake up one day to the fact that they need to do more networking. And when they do, we'll see a lot more of them in organisations like BNI. With the banks, as I mentioned there, obviously they're all high street names are involved in BNI, and we've asked them why they get involved in BNI because we like to develop our relationships with them. We get some fascinating answers when we ask that. You'd have thought that they just were interested in the business, but actually, what the banks see is the chance just for their relationship managers to be out talking and networking with local businesses. They find that very powerful. Even if it won them no business at all, the fact that they're out there being seen in the community and also getting the development that comes from being a member of an organisation like BNI, just simply standing up and presenting your business effectively. That's powerful education they enjoy, and also just the ability to learn the process of building relationships, which is they found very valuable. So there's a lot of value seen in small business networking groups like BNI from the bigger business.
You're a national director of BNI, and they run local groups. How do they work, and how are they different?
Okay, what BNI does is sets up groups of businesses where there's only one person per professional category. And then they train the groups to be very effective at finding referral business for one another. If small businesses don't get business out of their BNI group, they're going to leave. So we rely on making sure that we educate our members to show them how to get good business from a group. What sets BNI apart are 2 main things. Number 1, the structure of the groups. We've got feedback off people who come and visit groups for the first time, and almost across the board, the most commonly appreciated aspect about BNI from the visitors is that there is a strong structure that makes the business work. You've got to be there. You've got to be there every week. You've got to get there nice and early. Typically, they're mostly breakfast meetings. They're early, so not to cut into the working day, but you've got to be there at the crack of dawn. There's there's an expectation you're going to participate. I mean, if you sit there every week expecting referrals to come to you, you know, it's going to show up pretty quickly that you're just in it for yourself and you're not really there to help others. So yeah, the structure is one of the reasons why it works. The other thing that really sets us apart is the results that we generate. BNI operates on a giver's gain philosophy, in that if I can give you business, you'll want to give me business in return. But when that business comes in return, we track every bit of business that's passed within BNI groups. Groups in the UK last year turned over £269 million worth of business, and we believe that's actually quite a conservative estimate, because what typically happens is there's a lot of other business that gets generated through a BNI group. We call them spin-off bits of business. So perhaps if you've done a good bit of work for me, I'm going to be pleased about it. I'm going to refer you on to someone else, totally separate to the BNI group, but that's still business for you. And we believe there's a lot more business that actually happens on top of the business that we do track. Last year, BNI groups turned over £269 million worth of business. Our goal is to get that number to £1 billion per year, and our goal is to do that by 2020. But essentially, we deliver results, so it's about the structure and the results that we deliver. BNI is now in 48 different countries. It started in the US and came over to expanded to Canada. It started in the US in 85, expanded to Canada in 95, and came over the Atlantic to the UK in 96. And since then has gone all over the place, largely by referral, I should say. Across the world, we've got about 135,000 members, about 6,800 chapters. There's a lot of people doing business, and we're starting to measure the amount of business in billions when we look at it worldwide. I think what's powerful for an individual business is, well, okay, I appreciate that there's always going to be large numbers, £269 million worth of business in the UK last year. That's great, but what am I going to see myself? And it's really about what the return that I can get as a small business. And what we've seen across various surveys that we've done is that the average business in BNI will turn over £26,000. As I say, we're all about delivering results and tracking and ensuring that tracking those results and ensuring that our members do get one. Because if our members don't get any business from BNI, well, they'll leave. And if that's the case, then we don't have a business. So it's in our interest to make sure our members get business. As I say, £26,000 is an average. There's plenty of businesses turning over many times more than that. I was talking to a printer only the other day who's turning over well in excess of £100,000 a year from his membership.
How can people get more information about BNI? Presumably you've got websites and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Well, primary place for information will be our website, www.bni.eu. You can call the national office here at 01923 891 999, 01923 891 999, or alternatively, get along and visit a BNI group. There's been no point in thinking about BNI until you've gone and witnessed a group and seen it in action, seen what happens. So by all means, get along and visit a group. They run up and down the country.
Well, thank you very much, Charlie, and thank you everybody else for joining in. If you're not a member of the Accidental Salesman Business Development Club, then please join at www.theaccidentalsalesman.com, and I'll keep you informed of future teleseminars, competitions, and lots of other free stuff, all free and all from the Accidental Salesman. Thank you.